I'm going to read a bit from one of the novellas, the second novella, which is called Jannat Ki Hawa, or The Breeze in Paradise. Pakistan Zindabad. The monsoon season was coming to Karachi. Every year during the monsoons it rained incessantly, the type of heavy tropical rain that could bring real joy to farmers and those affected by the heat. In Karachi, it started a reign of chaos. The roads very soon gave way, and within weeks, giant potholes would appear, or the rain would collect in the potholes that had already existed. Either way, Karachi was rendered untraversable, and this happens every year. The first heavy rains began at some time in the wee hours at the end of July. By the time commuter traffic started, it was in full swing. 4 feet of rain had fallen in 7 hours, and by 10 a.m., the roundabout at the Two Swords had cars marooned around it, practically floating helplessly. Motorcyclists were up on the curb, having heaved their vehicles up and sat chatting as if on their own private island in the center of Karachi. That was the thing about Pakistan. People did not get overly distraught about catastrophe. How could they when, whether man-made or natural, they were subjected to it on a regular basis? So they couldn't get into work. It was okay. Nobody else could either, and nobody expected any different. As the week went on, the news was filled with stories of billboards out on various roads having fallen down under the duress of the rains and winds, and a general alert was put out to everybody to try not to be near them or electrical poles during the rain or after the rain. This, however, was never a deterrent to anybody in Karachi. As Javed attempted to make his way to work, trousers rolled up to his knees, every day he marveled at the capacity of nature to turn the lives of man upside down. The road outside Ideal Bakery had stayed flooded about 3 feet high all week. The land was turning to ocean. There seemed to be not much difference between the two. It became a common sight to see bands of men helping one another push their cars out of a deep water pocket. Their clothes would be soaked, but they would be laughing and pushing at the same time. Javed himself had twice stopped to assist, once an elderly professor at Karachi University, and a second time a driver taking his begum to Agha supermarket. A begum is like a housewife of Karachi, basically. Begum Saab, you hear that in the sort of colonial, the English sort of took that. Mem Saab, they would call the Indian women Mem Saab in colonial times, Begum Saab. There was never any question of a person attempting to get out of a sticky spot alone. If you were in trouble on the road at any time of the year, let alone in the monsoons in Karachi, you could guarantee that not just one or two, but a whole gang of people would magically appear to assist you. Javed sat on the window ledge of his room smoking a gold leaf in his hostel after 5 hours on the road in total to and from work, when usually it was 1 hour each way. Despite being exhausted, he felt strangely peaceful. The monsoons were the great levelers, and there was always a certain modicum of excitement to the chaos that they brought. The air was deliciously cool as he sat in his mercury vest and loose shalwar. It was Wednesday, and he had risked life and limb to get to Sher Jan's that evening. But Zainab had never come. It was unlikely that she would. How could she have? Rickshaws had a bad time of it in the season of deluge, and certainly she couldn't afford the snazzy taxi service with clean new cars every time. The beat-up old black and yellow taxis fared worse than the rickshaws, both vehicles that seemed held together by sheer force of will the rest of the year gave up the ghost in the monsoons. Perhaps he would never see her again. One never knew what would happen to people during the monsoons. Once they were finally over, you would hear stories of people dispossessed, killed in an electrical pole mishap, or drown caught in the current in the Arabian Ocean. He realized he was being overly morbid, shook it off, and went to get a cup of tea from the communal kitchen of the hostel. August 14th, Independence Day, arrived smack dab in the middle of the monsoon. Every year, the armed forces held a special event that was televised all over the country. People clustered around their television sets to see the air display, the marching and the shooting. Flags usually started appearing a few weeks before. Some made of cloth, usually the large ones, would appear in the markets for sale. Others made of paper would adorn the outsides of houses and shops. Javed loved this time of the year. Everyone on the street seemed full of goodwill and camaraderie. He and his friends met in the morning to eat hot halwa puri and fragrant cholas, and then go on a drive waving flags and yelling, "Pakistan Zindabad! Long live Pakistan!" like all the other male motorcycle crews did on August 14th. Suzuki vans with people hanging out the back and off the sides drove shrieking and yelling joyfully by. Luckily, the rain had temporarily abated for a few days in advance, so some roads had recovered, allowing more freedom of movement. Others, however, had just become pools of stagnant water, trapping anyone who attempted to drive through them. They drove down the ideal bakery road in an attempt to get to Seaview, but found themselves adrift with other marooned souls. People had altogether abandoned the enterprise and were sitting idly on the strip of grass embedded in concrete that divided the two-way traffic. Some wore Pakistan flag pins, some waved flags. The air of revelry and celebration was palpable. A little further up, some guys were making joints in the middle of the road, in the middle of the day, in the midst of the chaos of the monsoon floods. Javed and his friends decided to join them. As Javed sat stone in the middle of Clifton, watching the traffic trying to get by, he noticed a curious thing. None of the expensive cars carrying their dear cargo of elite Karachi was sporting any emblems of patriotism. The expressions of the people in the cars were sour and dissatisfied. It was the drivers of those cars also who, finding themselves stuck in a pothole, yelled and fulminated at people trying to help them, whilst their employers sat put in their Honda Civics, staring out of the window as random passers-by tried to haul their seated fat asses along the road. Javed started giggling at that. Anjum looked over at him. Kya hua? What up? Bas yaar ye nazara hai. Oh, nothing, just this spectacle of people. Yeah, it's a fish market, Anjum agreed, laughing. They seemed to have sat there for hours, getting steadily more red-eyed. They started singing songs. Soon some of the guys too started singing vociferously, Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. What is the meaning of Pakistan? There is no God but Allah. This was the cue for Javed and his friends to move on. They were Allah-loving Muslims like the next man, but these days, this type of out-and-out religiosity was something they stayed clear of. You never know where the next fundu was going to spring from with a bomb strapped to his person. They managed to continue their travels towards their sacred place in the madness of Karachi, the beach. At one point, Harris's motorbike got too much water in its exhaust. It started choking and sputtering, so they waited for it to dry off at a coca by the side of the road, sitting on rickety chairs, drinking thumbs up and smoking cigarettes. Have you guys noticed, started Javed, how today it is the poorest people who are out on the street celebrating? How it's us who are most excited? What are you on about, Mr. Philosopher? Replied Anjum lightly. Well, just look around. All the big cars have no flags. There are definitely no begums hanging out the windows yelling Pakistan Zindabad. The image made him laugh. Yeah, I guess you're right, agreed Anjum. This is the state of things, friend. You're right. Overhearing people in the markets or at work, it's always the guy with the biggest house, the largest car, or the auntie with the most gold dripping off her who will start complaining about, ye mulk to badbaad ho gaya. This country is destroyed, this and that. These people are crazy, Javed explained passionately. Those who have the biggest problems because of the inefficiency of the country, electricity, water, they seem to have the most passion. Rashid Tracy and Harris, in a falsetto voice, mimicking or mocking a begum, said, "Oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of filling petrol in my generator, I tell you, darling." An uproar of laughter followed. "I think," said Javed, starting to stand up on his chair, unsteadily under the effect of the multiple joints they had smoked, "there should be a law. The more air conditioners and generators you have, the less right you have to complain." They laughed. "Yeah, and those designer sunglasses, and Pajeros, and mobile phones," chimed in Rashid, Harris, and Anjum, aping a trendy, talking fashionably into his fashionable phone, running his fingers through his hair, shoulders and chest all puffed out. They lifted their bottles of thumbs up, cheering in unison, "Pakistan, Zindabad." That's